Listen well, boy. You will hear tales of many knights as heroes, as gods of steel who stride through the battlefield untouched. They are lies, all of them. A knight bleeds as his pilot does, and I have bled more than most. I have buried sons who bore my crest. I have watched my wife burn within my hold, and I have seen my world broken beneath an enemy I could not kill. All of that should have broken me, if I thought that this life were mine, and mine alone. But it is not. This throne I bear, this engine I command, they are not gifts of my pride, they are burdens of my duty. When I sit in the cockpit of glory to soul, I do not stand for my own honor, I stand for those who cannot. For the farmer who tills ash into bread, for the widow who weeps alone, for every soul that still dares to live in this darkening galaxy. My strength is theirs, my will is theirs. So yours must be too, when the time comes. Steel can be broken, boy. Flesh can be burned, but resolve can outlast the very stars we sought to conquer. That is what it means to be a knight. That is what it means to be their High King. Remember this. You do not fight to destroy the enemy. You fight to be a beacon in the dark. You will shine brighter than I ever could.
You guys like mechs? Pacific Rim, Gundam, Titanfall, Iron Harvest. Actually, come to think of it, Iron Harvest, yeah. It's funny how the concept of soldiers piloting massive mechs for warfare is not a wholly Western or Eastern concept. It's kind of like dragons in the world. It's just universally accepted as being something badass, and like, come on, it is badass. There's variations in it for sure. Titans are more bipedal, hard sci-fi. Gundams are frankly taking the piss at being marketable toys and also being incredibly iconic. Zaku is forever one of the sickest designs for me in all of mecha. And Pacific Rim should have never gotten a sequel. Also, why was GLaDOS in the trailer? Was she even in the movie? Does anyone remember that? Giant stompy robots are forever going to be a thing in sci-fi universes that will appear in one way or another. Fuck, the entirety of Metal Gear is literally based and named around these things. So enter Imperial Knights. The big stompy robots of the 41st millennia are responsible for being the favorite army of meta huggers that force the meta to exist around them, until the Eldar inevitably break the game again. The Eldar hate will continue until I get around to talking about them, but hello, I am Diodium, the man in the broken tower, here once again to talk about a faction that this time is breaking up my schedule, because I'm a fucking idiot and I promised this jackass an Imperial Knight video next week. I meant to say the next week I did an Imperium faction, so fuck. That's happening. I honestly might just do whatever faction at this point, but I'd like to at least fake like I have a schedule. That being said, I'm literally writing the script at work because I like being a leech on the government. So, Imperial Knights, am I right? And a bold claim in the title because clickbait is the name of the game on YouTube, and as I try to find my way with what works and what doesn't, I think I'm gonna stick with whatever pisses people off, or at least gauges their interest. It's funny how there's so many comments that are people who definitely didn't watch the full video because they take the titles way too seriously. Also, because we're talking about knights, I just want to mention something. We are going to talk about the tabletop because it's kind of why, in my opinion, knights suck. Also, to that cocksucker who called my friend trash because he plays knights, go fuck yourself, because at the end of the day, that guy is my friend, and I don't know who the fuck you are. All that aggression aside, I have to talk about British Gundam now. So, who are the Imperial Knights? Where did they come from? And why are they the most boring and shitty faction in the Imperium? First off, that's bait. Secondly, a message for me. Subscribe. I don't know how many of you there are, but a few of the videos hit 20k views, and if you're from those, why not just hang out? It'd be fun to catch some of you during my painting streams. So Imperial Knights are they're pretty old, both in lore and in real life, actually, come to think of it. Like Dark Age of Technology old. They themselves are almost as old as Dark Age of Technology, and they're almost to that level of tech. Not an insane degree like things like Men of Iron or Blackstone Fortresses, but we'll go ahead and get there. You get 5 seconds to guess what these knights were used for during the Dark Age. They were farm equipment. Knights were sent to colonize worlds in what was called the Long March. I believe this was during humanity's great expansion across the galaxy, large terraforming and colonization efforts. We all know how the story goes. The Age of Strife occurs, humanity is all cut off from each other, and the entirety of what would be the Imperium ends up degrading. Because I forget, at this point, they're actually not the Imperium, they're just the human empire, I guess. Proto-Imperium. It doesn't matter too much. I want to talk about the old-ass Imperial Knight origins just because it's fucking stupid. There's a good reason as to why 40k gets retconned, and this is why. So Imperial Knights exist because of the Eldar. The Eldar Empire fell, and they ended up creating Eldar Knights. I guess that's the precursor to Wraith Knights, I think. The funny thing is that the Eldar Knights were used by the Exodites and for one express purpose of fucking ranching dinosaurs. And the Imperium, I guess, just copied that. You can thank Dave from Tabletop Time for that little nugget lore. Going back to the actual canon and avoiding talking about Eldar any further, Night Worlds, as they ended up being classified, had been separated from the human empire for so long that when the Imperium showed up, some worlds just didn't know who the fuck they were. I think they just thought they were alone or something. The main reason why a lot of Night Worlds and houses joined the Imperium was for actually two reasons. One, the priesthood of Mars offered up their services to repair, maintain, and venerate the knights within their armories. This included upholding gaudy ceremonies, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. The other reason they would join is for the obvious reason, is security and strength in numbers. A knight is powerful, especially on the tabletop, but at the end of the day, a knight can get taken out with plenty of last cannon shots if you're handy enough with them. Knights aren't invincible. The Adeptus Mechanicus are the gurus of the machine and are more than happy to work on tech as old as knights and keep them running. Like most things during the Age of Strife, the worlds the knights ended up being on started to degrade due to being cut off from the rest of the human empire, and also possible infighting and civil wars and whatever else plagued the planet. Practically all of them devolved into feudal states, nobilities, lords, kings, the whole 9 yards. It looked like an episode of The Crown almost. Or Game of Thrones, actually. Except there's a Zaku in the background. Obviously, during the heresy, a good amount of night houses ended up serving chaos, and we'll talk about that in like 8 weeks. You can thank a jackass for spamming me for the last week. Also, Chaos Knights have like no lore, that's a fact. Imperial Knights somewhat got folded into the Titan Legions because they technically count as Titans. They're just smaller. They're like 2/3 the size of a Warhound Titan, I think. And also some of them have Void Shields, so yeah, smaller Titans. I say smaller, look at these fucking things, they're massive. They aren't Jaeger status, but this thing is more than capable of taking on a Norn Emissary in melee. Remember Norn Emissaries? No one runs them. Okay, I think that is literally all the origins for Imperial Knights lore. If someone complains, why didn't you talk about this heresy character or something, I'm gonna flip. The Horus Heresy is like 60 plus books. I don't have time to read all of those yet. I have a job. All you need to know right now is that Imperial Knights are giant mechs from feudal worlds that date back to the Dark Age of technology, relics of a bygone age that are venerated and wielded by noble houses who are exactly as snobby as you think an aristocrat in a mech would be. The knights themselves are far more interesting than the lore. That being said, if you want a good story involving knights, I would recommend reading or listening to Assassinorum Kingmaker. It's a double feature novel. It follows a cadre of Imperial assassins that work to bring an unruly night world into compliance through assassination, espionage, and complex alliances. It's a pretty decent book, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to talk about it in this video, I'm sorry. I want to talk about Imperial Knight House structures because I think it's actually pretty neat. When I was doing research on them, I own the codex and I actually don't know where it is, so I may or may not have found it on specific sources online. And I also skimmed the wikis a little bit just to make sure I was getting some things right. But why do I say that? I was literally reading the book. Whatever. Their structures vary depending on the night houses because there's two types of night houses. There is Quaestores Imperialis, who you imagine, or Questor Imperialis. Yes, Questor Imperialis, not Quaestorus. Knights of the Round Table, nobles who dedicate their lives and blade to the sanctity of all that exists within their realm and beyond. And then there is Questor Mechanicus. These guys are mostly found in the Titan Legions rather than just being by themselves. But because they work with Forge Worlds more than anyone else, they usually get some decent upgrades as well. These guys mostly defend Forge Worlds, or in case of places like Lucius, I guess, they probably are getting teleported into battle straight up. Why? Because it's funny. My personal favorite is neither Questorus or Mechanicus actually, but they're called Freeblades, a pilot and knight that act as mercenaries for whoever pays them the most, or if they're bound by some sort of oath. Be it planetary nobility, the Inquisition, or a rogue trader, etc. I wish there was a way to play a knight pilot in Wrath and Glory. Or maybe there is, who knows. Freeblades are awesome because they give so much in the way of customizability and flavor. Take my knight for instance, he's piloted by the High King of his realm, the knight's name is Glory to Soul, and as you can see there are 3 distinct things about it, or 4. Firstly, there is a dead Leviathan dreadnought of the Iron Warriors, relevant because his planet is a beautiful garden world that was sieged by them once, causing so much pollution and damage that some parts of the world will never grow again. He takes it on himself as a personal vendetta to destroy them wherever he sees them. Secondly, his weapon is a double-barrel shotgun because I thought it would be fucking sick. Originally, I wanted a plasma bolt effect on it, but I didn't use fluorescent paint at the time, so I removed it. Another is his faceplate. I think it adds way more to the mystery or the nobility of this knight. Who he is doesn't matter even if he is the High King. His visage comes last to his deeds. That being said, a massive ass chain cape, and yes, it moves. I am very proud of this, and it was awful to put together. It took me like 4 days to get it all done correctly. I want to go ahead and talk about Knight House structures, like actually talk about them rather than the tangent I was going on, because it's very medieval. The High King rules over all in a Questor Imperialis household. Beneath him are many barons of different powers, and beneath them are vassals. Territory they hold, minor houses, so on and so forth. There are 4 specific positions under the High King that are important, at least 4 that we know so far. The King's Ward is the defender of the king, both in court and on the battlefield. Probably the best friend of the king, or at least their closest brother in arms. They are usually supposed to be the best fighters or duelists in the house. The Gatekeeper is probably the sickest title, and they don't protect a gate as their name suggests. They defend the king's entire fortress or keep. Probably more head of security than Soul Defender, but Soul Defender also sounds way more badass. Fucking Gate of Eternity moment. The Herald is the far more boring one, and it sounds like it says. They're the Herald, however, it is an incredibly important role for my understanding. The Herald speaks with the authority of the High King and at times must act on his behalf, is my understanding. The Master of Judgment is what it sounds like. He is the law. Judge, jury, executioner with a bigger emphasis on executioner. If anybody fucks up, betrays, or so forth, they meet their end under his blade. For Mechanicus households, it's slightly different. Princeps is basically another name for a High King, but because they're heavily tied to the Machine Cult and Titan Legions, they end up having the same title as those who pilot Titans. Same deal, they have barons and vassals, but their titles specifically are pretty neat. The Master of Lore, or the Cogitator Prime, exists to keep guard of the sacred data belonging to the house, as well as acting as a mediator for conflicts between houses or between fellow knights. The Master Tactician is self-explanatory. They are one of the best fighters in the house, but not just in a duel, on a battlefield. They can win entire battles and probably have years of experience under their belt to prove they know what they're doing. It's probably one of the few positions that is actually earned through merit. Because Questor Mechanicus Knights protect Forge Worlds, the Forge Master is the defense of these forges, hence the name. Basically the Mechanicus version of the Gatekeeper, and then there is the Master of Vox. You think they're the Herald, but no, these guys are also called Broadhailers, and they exist to be giant command towers that are able to direct orders to every detachment that the knights are fighting with in battle, even to distant allies. How distant? No fucking idea. GW is bad at scale. Also, fun fact about Questor Mechanicus Knights, sometimes the Knight Pilot will willingly allow himself to be completely entombed into his Knight and never leave, because Machine Cult. Then we have Freeblades, knights who don't ally themselves with either the Imperialis or the Mechanicus. Most Freeblades are some form or other of nobility, or they were at least trained by nobility and a real knight. After all, they got their knight from somewhere, and when it comes to them, they're usually exiled or on a quest or something in between. Usually they act as mercenaries for whoever can afford their services, and my favorite thing about them is that they're fucking strong. Think about it, a single knight isn't crazy on the scale of 40k. If you're a Freeblade though, you're probably known around the block a little bit. Your name is spoken with either reverence or with fear, and your presence on the battlefield is like dropping a brick on the scale. It's like a mythical figure showing up. It's literally the Rohirrim from Lord of the Rings. And you know what's even funnier? Sometimes Freeblades get together and basically form their own house. I think they're called companies, I can't remember, but it's funny. You just get a bunch of mythical, renowned killers whose tales are spoken like fables, and they all just decide to fight shoulder to shoulder. Yeah, whoever's going against them is fucked. I miss 9th edition. In 9th edition, you were able to choose who you wanted your knights to be allied with, and you were also able to take a Freeblade company. Have I mentioned I hate 10th edition and all the whiny babies who wanted the game to be simpler and they still don't play the game? This is your fault. I don't get to have Freeblade companies because of you. This is all your fault. If you don't have time to play the game though, that's different and understandable, don't feel bad. So that's the Knight house structures, and we're already halfway through the script, and I'm not even going to talk about the notable houses. I've been avoiding talking about sub-factions for this long that aren't like legions, and I'm not going to start doing that anytime soon. Instead, I want to go through each Knight chassis themselves because they're just pretty neat. I'm going to mostly talk about the plastic Knight kits with some Forge World things here and there just because one of them I really like. We're going to go ahead and start with Armigers. Armigers are basically squires. Before you can pilot a big Knight, you got to pilot the small ones. I should talk about the Throne Mechanicum, huh? The Throne Mechanicum is a cybernetic device that allows the pilot to plug themselves in, and they're able to control the knight much better as if it was literally their own body. No weird joystick controls. Think of how amp students and avatars look. Well, sort of, because these guys are just sitting in there the entire time. All Imperial Knights have machine spirits. The more bigger or more bombastic, the more powerful they are, and when you enter the Throne Mechanicum, it's like you have to wrestle the machine spirit in order to subdue it. Sort of like getting a horse to be comfortable with you before you can actually start riding it. I think it's called breaking a horse. I don't remember. I live in California. We don't have horses here. Sometimes the throne can just full out fucking reject somebody. And also, the spirits of the dead just kind of live in the night. It's not fully known what's going on as far as I'm concerned. Machine spirits are incredibly complex. Some people think they're literally a ghost in the machine. Some people think they're rudimentary AI. Other people think it's something about the Void Dragon. But some Knight chassis are so old, when you plug into them, you get bombarded with the voices of all those who came before them, and all their souls are bound to the Knight after death. I think this is brought up a little bit during Storm of Iron when the Titan Legion shows up. I think a Warhound Titan Princeps is having to listen to the ancient spirits of his ancestors drone on to him about how they want to go to battle. That being said, armigers are less intense to the pilot. Helverins are mobile weapon platforms more than anything, actually, much less of a knight. They're armed with 2 autocannons, and they are meant to take out light vehicles and snipe targets. An autocannon, after all, is just a sniper rifle if you scale the guy holding it big enough. Warglaives are the more liked variant of the two, armed with a massive chainsword and melt-a-gun. These guys are really bloodthirsty. They usually hunt in packs if it wasn't horrifying enough, and they literally drive by whoever they are with thermal spears, and if that isn't enough, they pull out their best Denji cosplay and make the battle rated A for fuck. Oiraxes are Heresy-era armigers, and they get a bunch of weapons, and they're kind of complicated and old Mechanicum stuff, and they're not particularly interesting. Oh, right. Armigers have a miniature Throne Mechanicum called a Helm Mechanicum. It's a lot easier for the pilot to control the knight. Yeah, that's about it for armigers. Now we're getting onto the mainstays, the Questoris chassis. The Knight Crusader is probably the more well-known one. It is a bastion of firepower. Wielding an Avenger Gatling cannon and a rapid-fire battle cannon, these things are basically siege engines, fire support, and suppressive fire, all built into one chassis for conveniently just a little over 400 points, at least in current 40k. They're literally meant to obliterate the opposition with overwhelming firepower. The Knight Defender chassis is actually new in-game, and he just straight up has a void shield on his back. I believe the exact same pattern that is used for Titans. He only gets 1 as opposed to the Warlord Titan, which has I think 12 or 18, something stupid like that. It exists to defend people and keep them out of harm's way, and comes armed with a massive-ass plasma gun and a conversion beamer. We already have Knights, and now we're just strapping them with even more Dark Age tech. I see you, GW. Knight Errants are guys who just want to lead from the front. They carry a fuck-ass Reaper chainsword and a thermal lance. They're not savages, they want to at least have some firepower that doesn't come from casting fist. They're sensible enough to know that having a gun is as good as having a fist. And now we're on to Knight Gallants, who decided that only casting fist is the only solution to your problems. Bad grades? Cast fist. Is the wife cheating? Cast fist. Taxes? Cast fist. The old lady in the front grocery store is paying an exact change and taking forever? Believe it or not, cast fist. These guys are actually insane. In a world where the enemy has firepower to level cities, they choose to take minimal amounts of firearms and instead choose to vibe check the enemy because it was their god-given right. The Knight Paladin is the most basic guy. Rapid fire battle cannon and an interchangeable melee weapon. They're kind of just hang back and do all the grunt work. Gallants are to the Marines as Paladins are to being the army. One gains territory and the other holds it, and does the more boring work. As boring as it can be piloting a 5-story tall robot. The Knight Preceptor, I think is how you say it, is actually a mentor. They're in charge of watching over the squires and basically embody the code chivalric, even if it's insane at times. They will charge into melee combat when the opportunity arises, never back down from a challenge. Common knight shit, you know? Canis Rex, the only named knight character, is a Freeblade Preceptor, but more on him towards the end, because there's actually something I really like about him. The knight specifically, not Sir Hector. Lastly, for the Quest Store Knights is the Knight Warden, another frontline knight wielding the Avenger Gatling Cannon and a Thunderstrike Gauntlet. They prefer rate of fire over accuracy, taking out small to medium threats, and they do rather well at it. I just want to say, we had an old stratagem with the Imperial Knights back in like 8th edition. It might have been the 9th edition as well. I forget what it was called, but if you had a Thunderstrike Gauntlet equipped, you could, if a character was near you, swipe at them and start to slowly crush them in your gauntlet, and you would have to do contesting rolls to see how many mortal wounds they would take before they died. It was so cool. Now you can kind of achieve the same thing because all knights are characters, and you can just do epic challenge and hit Marnius Calgar with like 5 strike profiles from the Thunderstrike gauntlet and just instant kill him if one goes through. It's so funny. I love precisioning people with knights. Nobody expects it. The only Cerastus knight I want to talk about, speaking of sniping characters in melee, is the Lancer. I mean, just look at this thing. It's the only knight in game with an invult in melee, I believe, as far as I know. And given their live form, they are used for fast charges or flanking or head-on. This leads them to being more glory-hungry knights. And the weapon? It's a shock lance. It operates on the same principle as the pile bunker from Armored Core, using hydraulics to shoot out a spike that penetrates the foe during the thrust. The weapon itself operates like an EMP, I believe, and tries to sneak through void shields. It can also shoot lightning because why not? Lastly, I want to talk about my favorite knight, which is the Acastus Knight Asterius. This massive fucking thing is armed with conversion beamers as opposed to volcano cannons that the Porphyrion has, I believe. And its sole purpose is to destroy anything from vehicles to titans to fortresses. You see those conversion beamers it has? It causes subatomic implosions within whatever they're hitting. Sound familiar? It is one of the most feared weapons in the Knight arsenal, and that being said, God, please do not buy this fucking kit. It is not worth it. There are 3D modelers who make way more better fucking kits than this, and they're much less annoying to use. Here's my Asterius. It's chaos, but you get the picture. It's the same principle. Big ass knight, big terrifying guns. I really like it. We're done talking about the actual models now. Wow, this script is fucking long, but let's keep going just a little bit. This is going to be less edited video, and I apologize for that, but 1, I want to get this out. 2, I want to talk about British Mecha, and 3, this was kind of a rush order because once again, I promised this video back to somebody. It's funny, I don't even know this person, and I just feel compelled to do it because I said I was going to do it, even if it was by accident. The fun thing about knights, or maybe the thing that you hate, is that they're all pompous dickheads. Everything is about etiquette, manners, honor, and more. But it's this way for a reason. It's literally to teach discipline. To some knight houses, knowing how to use all 3 different kinds of a fork is just as important as knowing what intensity to put your las impulsor on. Why? Because discipline doesn't appear, it's learned. You don't want to just put anyone in a knight. Sometimes it just kills the person. Sometimes you end up with an unworthy person who is so strong-willed he can actually just dominate the knight's machine spirit itself. And now you have a sociopath stuck in a knight. All knights are bound by the Code Chivalric. If I remember correctly, they are protect those in need, defend the realm, refuse no challenge, and lay low the tyrants. This actually used to be a mechanic in game last edition. It was really cool. Knights are not just pompous dickheads, they're pompous dickheads who have a duty. No matter who is under them, they will protect them. Obviously, this is a very biased and rose-tinted glasses version of what a knight house should be, just like how we have rose-tinted glasses about how chivalry and what it was to be a knight back in the day, but it's the Imperium. Humanity is fighting a war against chaos, aliens, and even themselves. I would like to think that your fellow man would defend you to their last breath. There's an animation of Imperial Knights on Warhammer Plus. I've never seen it. I heard it was okay. Check it out if you already have the subscription. This video is going on for long enough, but I want to go ahead and leave you with a story about Sir Hector and his knight Canis Rex. Sir Hector's home came under siege and fell to the Iron Warriors, forcing him to become a Freeblade as he had no house towards the end of this battle. As always, if I get any of this wrong, please let me know. After his house got demolished, he was captured to be taken by Chaos to be corrupted, and the same happened to his knight. No one knows why, but Canis Rex, his knight, broke out of the bindings it had and ran through hundreds of enemies in order to reach Sir Hector to save him. It was damaged and, if I remember correctly, completely powered off. And this is one of my favorite stories because it involves a machine spirit taking full control. This and the Land Raider from the Crimson Fists are one of my favorites. You know how powerful machine spirits are? Some Imperial Knights get pissy and refuse to work if their heraldry is repainted either different colors or is just improperly painted. Machine spirits are a massive topic in 40k and they honestly deserve their own video, but that's some deeper lore stuff and currently we're just hitting surface level things. I mean, I say that, but I also just recommended like an Imperial Knight book. It referenced some old lore probably nobody heard about and referencing books this entire time, actually, more than I think about it. I think Imperial Knights as a faction are cool. Their models are cool, but as an army, I think they suck. The reason I don't like them as an army is because we run into the Eldar problem. Yeah, see, I told you we were going to talk about Eldar. I think I said that. I don't remember. The script is too long. I don't remember what I said 14 pages ago. The reason I don't like them as an army is because, like I said, we run into the Eldar situation. Knights don't play 40k, they're playing their own game and they're just forced to work in our rule system. I have people I know who are salty bitches and say knights don't belong in 40k, and I don't agree with that. I just think that the reason why knights are so oppressive, especially now, is because we decided to give them feel no pain. I say we, this is Games Workshop's fault. Games Workshop decided to give them feel no pains. I know those got taken away recently, but it's been 2-3 years and we've been suffering with that, so bite me. And also they expanded the toughness of tanky units without increasing the strength of all of our anti-tank weapons outside of blast cannons and their equivalents. I mentioned in my tournament video, if you want to go watch and hear me talk about it, but a single knight like a Freeblade is fine, and honestly it's really fun. It's a hard unit to shift, but when you shift it, you're golden. Now imagine having to deal with 4+ knights, and that just isn't fun. One of my best friends plays knights, and he's a bit of a sweat, but even more than him, I know he wants to play dumb games more than actually competitive. We try to do narrative stuff every now and again when we get the chance, and he has fun with it. He just likes big, stumpy robots, but I think he also likes knights more because they're less stress on him to play as an army. He came from playing Imperial Guard, where he had 100+ models, and now he's only down to 12 at most. Gameplay aside, they are an interesting faction that is a rather fun take on not what it means to just be noble, but what it means to be a hero. To quote, and forgive me, I believe this is paraphrased, I wasn't able to find the full one, but this is actually from Assassinorum Kingmaker, if I remember correctly. The people serve a squire serves a knight serves a baron serves a king. Who does the king serve? The people. For the crown is not a pyramid, but a circle. Thanks for listening.